And over to you, Gabriela.
Okay, thank you very much, Dina. Good afternoon, good evening, or maybe good morning, depending on the part of our planet you are the attendees of this event. My name is Gabriela Owanta. I'm Associate Professor of Public International Law and Chair of Jean Monnet Chair on the Law of the Sea at the University of A Coruña in Spain. This is the second time I moderate a panel and teach in the framework of this well-known summer-winter school, which is organized by the Global Network of Human Rights and Environment and the United Nations Environment Programme in collaboration with Southampton Law School. I would like to thank you, Dina, and your team for considering our proposal interesting, useful for the aims of this year edition of the Summer-Winter School. It is a great pleasure to share this moment with two colleagues of mine. On the one hand, I'm referring to Anina Bürgin. She is lecturer in international law at the University of Vigo. And the second or third in talking during this panel is my colleague Laura Uchi Sancho. She is Associate Professor of Public International Law at the University of Barcelona. So this panel is made up by three members of teaching staff at three different Spanish universities. The title of our panel is the European Union's Sustainable Blue Economy and Challenges of the Ecological and Digital Transition. For those who are not especially familiarized with this topic, I would like to make four brief observations. First, the European Union is an international organization of integration. Therefore, it has international legal personality. Second, the European Union is one of the main maritime international actors, and this is especially important in order to understand what the European Union may do in relation to the digital and ecological transitions. Third, with the creation of the Integrated Maritime Policy in 2007, the European Union has begun to consider the various economic sectors linked to seas and oceans as a whole, and to speak of the existence of a blue economy encompassing all economic activities related to seas and oceans. And fourth, in 2019, the European Commission presented its European Green Deal, which sets out a new sustainable growth strategy and addresses one of the most important environmental and climate-related challenges. The European Union looks at the importance of leading the green and digital transitions. As I have just mentioned, this panel is made up by three persons. In the coming minutes, I will start by explaining the challenges of the ecological and digital transition and their link and relevance for the economic blue sectors in the European Union. After me, my colleague Anina Bürgin will talk about fisheries and the digital and ecological transition. And after that, my colleague Laura will talk about the impact of this twin transition on the coastal and maritime tourism. As I will explain in a few minutes, tourism and fisheries are two of the key elements of this double twin transition that is taking place in the European Union. We will talk about 15-20 minutes, please, not more, approximately. And the rest of the time allocated to this panel will be dedicated to discussion, debate. We are looking forward to receiving your feedback, comments, and doubts and questions. Well, with this, I hope you will enjoy the panel. Of course, those persons who are enrolled in this panel, but they're not online, they will have the opportunity to see our interventions. Well, we'll start, if we may, Dina, with the first lecture, the first topic. I have prepared a PowerPoint presentation. I will share my presentation. Okay. Okay, so thank you. In the following minutes, I will talk about some of the challenges of the ecological and digital transition for the European Union's action in relation to the economic blue sectors. As an introduction to this large topic, I would like to give you some information. The European Union is the world's biggest maritime power. 40% of the world fleet belongs to the European Union. Between 3 and 5% of GDP is produced by industries and services related to the sea. Almost 90% of the European Union external trade is carried by sea. The European Union has a very extensive coast, and it is considered to be the most important coastal entity. Remember that some of the European Union member states have territories in the Pacific Ocean, in the Indian Ocean, so we don't have to think about only to the European continent. Additionally, the European Union has one of the largest long-distance fleet. It is the fifth fishing power globally, and undoubtedly the first fish market in economic terms. This information allows us to understand the relevance of the European Union's action in relation to the seas and oceans. In the following minutes, I will focus on two main aspects. First, I will talk about the economic blue sectors in the European Union. And second, I will focus on the ecological and digital transition in relation, of course, to the economic blue sectors in the European Union. In relation to the economic blue sectors in the European Union, I would like to start by mentioning the European Green Deal, which is a soft law document published by the European Commission in December 2019. Have to take into account that the current European Commission has started its mandate on the 1st of December 2019. So at the very beginning of its mandate, it considered important for its future activity to publish this strategic document. It is considered that the European Green Deal has contributed so far to the fulfillment of the UN Sustainable Development Goals so far, and it is a good response to the climate and environmental related challenges, atmosphere warming, risk that 1 million species on the planet to be lost. Undoubtedly, the European Green Deal has to be linked to the realities, maritime realities, and it has undoubtedly a maritime dimension. It is unthinkable today that the European Green Deal can be enforced without taking into account the blue sectors. During several years before the adoption of the European Green Deal, the European Union acted in relation to the blue sectors in the framework under the umbrella of its Integrated Maritime Policy. I mentioned before that this policy, which is more like a strategy than a policy with legal background into the EU primary law, for many years, the expression blue growth was used. Nowadays, blue growth is considered to be an element of the sustainable blue economy. Actually, in 2021, the European Commission published a policy in relation to, or a strategic document regarding a new approach for a sustainable blue economy in the European Union. And since that moment, the blue economy is considered that has to be sustainable blue economy. The blue
Sorry,
sectors.
Gabriella.
Yes.
I was just wondering if you were trying to move your slides forward because we're still only seeing the first slide. Is that where we are, or are we not?
No, I have. Are you not able to see them?
We're only seeing the first slide.
Oh, I have passed 5 more slides. Sorry for this.
Sorry.
Well, I will leave the screen. I will try to share again. You are not possible to, you are, okay. So I will try to share again my slide, this one, compartir. Could you tell me what you are seeing now?
Now we see European Union and the economic blue sectors.
Okay, thank you so much. And sorry for this inconvenience. I don't know what it has happened. Well, I will pass. I was at this point. Could you see? It looks for making the transition from blue growth to a sustainable blue economy.
Yes, that's what we're
Yes. Okay, thank you. So it's working out. Well, I have mentioned that now blue growth is an element of the sustainable blue economy. This is an important aspect because we have to understand by the term blue sectors, both traditional sectors and emerging sectors. I am referring to traditional sectors when I'm mentioning fisheries, agriculture, tourism, transport and ports, and emerging sectors may be considered renewable energy or deep sea mining, for example. For the European Union has an important blue economy, and it is considered it provides about 4.5 million direct jobs. What is blue economy? Well, there are several definitions of the term blue economy. It is considered, for example, that it is a sustainable use of oceans, seas, and all the marine resources. And if we look at the Mediterranean Sea, just to put an example, which is a regional sea where only 8 EU member states are present, and there are more than double other third states which are not members of the European Union. So if we look at the Mediterranean Sea, we can see that the fisheries activities in the framework of the blue economy in the area generates about 353,000 direct jobs. Or tourism, in the coastal areas represents almost 80% of the jobs created in the blue economy sectors. And this is, I like to use this slide in order to show why we have chosen fisheries and tourism in order to talk about blue economy in the European Union and the digital and green transition. In relation to the development of the European Green Deal and the presence of the maritime dimension, I would like to mention that so far the European Commission has adopted other soft law, soft law texts, and even hard law texts. I'm referring, for example, to the European Commission's biodiversity strategy for 2030, adopted in 2020, or the Zero Pollution Action Plan and the Farm to Fork strategy. Both of them have been adopted and published in May 2020. Or to give the example of the European climate law, which is basically made by a regulation adopted in 2021, establishing the framework of achieving climate neutrality. As it is well known, the European Union is looking for a net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. This explains the relevance of the issues of the ecological and digital transitions in the European Union. In the following minutes, I will focus precisely on the ecological and digital transitions aspect in relation to the blue sectors in the European Union. Well, I will refer to the European Union, but I would like to mention that other states, for example, the United States of America, have adopted a strategy on its blue economy, and there are some points in common between both strategies. So I will refer only to the European Union. We all are involved in multiple crises that challenge our worldview. I will not refer to the pandemic impact on our daily lives. I will talk about current challenges for the future, or having into my mind future aspects. I consider that there is a clear interplay between the ecological and digital transitions. It is not possible, in my opinion, to talk about ecological transition without taking into account digital transition. I have mentioned before the European Green Deal as one of the main strategies of the current European Commission, but there are others, and one of them is in relation to the digital agenda, just to give you an example. While there is a potential large contribution by digital technology to the green transition, their increased use can come at a cost for the environment. And this is one of the challenges of these twin transitions. The green transition is also affecting digital technologies because they also have to reduce their environmental impact. On the other hand, the digital technologies and the electronic components and system value chain could be transformed towards environmental sustainability. Under this context, it is considered that green transition is an opportunity to unlock economic and societal benefits, while digital transition is an ongoing process that is shaping the future of societies and economies. Other ideas about these twin transitions: there is an interplay, and at the same time there is a union between them, or a union of them. Both transitions, it is stated that both transitions will transform our societies and economies. If we look at our daily life in 2019, for example, and our current daily life, we can see the transformation we have lived in the last 4 years, just to give you an example. Additionally, it is considered that the twin transition can be reinforced each other. Ecological transition needs digital transition and vice versa. But they are different in nature and they have a different dynamic, and these aspects have to be taken into account in order to understand their limits. For example, it is considered that the ecological transition is driven by the need to reach quickly the aims of climate neutrality and sustainability. It requires a political and societal push. And the digital transition, on the other hand, is an ongoing process of technology, and the private sector is one of its primary drivers. So the ecological transition and digital transition are different in nature, and their their dynamics are quite different. And just to give some final consideration and give the floor to the other two panelists, I would like to underline that the green transition and digital transition run in parallel. And the European Union has a great challenge in order to create synergies between them to manage the risk occasioned by each of these two aspects of this transition. And it is very important not to create two different agendas. I think the objective for the European Union is to still create economic growth and to get zero gas emissions and be climately neutral by 2050. There are lots of challenges in front of us, and it is very important not to push two separate agenda. And it is considered that the European Union has to look that digital transition becomes a powerful instrument for achieving a fair and just green transition. It's good to have a green transition and a digital transition, but we are talking about measures that are affecting people, the European citizens. So we have to take this human dimension into account as well. And as a final consideration, I would like to affirm that the future will be defined by how much of a success we make of the green and the digital transitions. Well, I thank you very much for your attention, and I give the floor to my colleague, Anina Bürgin. Anina, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriela. Thank you very much, Dina, and the team for organizing and accepting actually our panel. Yes, I'm very happy to have a closer look at one of the sectors of the blue economy, as Gabriela mentioned in the introduction, right? So fisheries is in our context, in the Spanish context, very important, but it's also important for other member states of the European Union, and specifically actually for all the coastal regions in the European Union. I also am going to share a PowerPoint presentation, or I will try it. Can you see it? Yes, okay, perfect. So what I'm going to look at a little bit on the fisheries sector. The fisheries sector is probably not the only, of course, but is also one of the pillars of the blue economy that faces a lot of challenges. We are talking about the digital and the ecological transition or challenges, right? Regarding the challenges of these transitions, and probably the ecological or the challenges of the ecological transition for the fisheries sector of the European Union fisheries sector is even more pronounced than probably the digital one. And I will come back to this at the end of my contribution, just to mention some challenges according to my point of view. So this is what I'm trying to do, or my structured intervention. As we are talking about the fisheries and sustainable fisheries of the European Union, or one of the pillars of the blue economy of the European Union, I thought I can structure it chronologically, just to give some insights and to understand the evolution for actually the last 10 years. And there have been a lot of developments and a lot of new rules and also new approaches for the fisheries sector of the European Union. And I just want to give you some referring actually to the objectives of the common fisheries policy, which is a legal norm, which is regulation still in place, and it's from 2013. And I just want to mention a little bit the objectives of the common fisheries policy, and I'm not going into details how it is actually managed, the fisheries sector, but just to show you the objectives of and the aims of the common fisheries policy, because this gives us an idea of what came actually afterwards. The Green Deal, which has on the sustainable blue economy, which has already been mentioned by Gabriela. And I just will going to highlight a little bit some elements which are important for the fisheries sector. And then in a newer approach, let's say, is the so-called package, or what was called package of 4 measures, which is point 4 of 2023 in February, which reflects the former 3 points from the common fisheries policy, elements of the Green Deal, sustainable blue economy, and then we have a kind of package which is not illegal, which are not legal norms. They are not, let's say, mandatory. But it shows very clear the vision and also the evolution of this fishery policy, combining, let's say, the transformation, mainly the green and blue transformation. And then some ideas, some inputs from my side on challenges and also opportunities of this youngest, let's say, 10 years evolution. But just to give you some or to remember for some of you probably also, there is a regulation of 2013 on the common fisheries policy. As I said, it's still in place. There has been revision evaluation has been undertaken by the European Commission, whether it should be amended or modified or not. And there was a report actually on this last February, and summarizing the legal basis doesn't have to be changed. The problem is more that it is implied correctly and of all of the member states of the European Union, and specifically that they comply with it, what is already in the legal base. The objectives, there is a whole list of the objectives, and just to summarize, just this article and then in the next slide some other points of this article, but just to show you what my idea why I show you this article is that the ecological transition or green issues or ecological and biodiversity issues is not new in the fisheries policy. They got more important, they gained more importance also in the political debates, but it's not that it's an invention, let's say, or a totally new approach with the Green Deal or with the sustainable blue economy. As you can see, the objectives, the objective 2013, the overall objective that the common fisheries policy shall ensure that fishing and also agriculture are environmentally sustainable in the long term. So you have the environmental dimension of sustainability, but then you can also see, in the ending, let's say, this Article 2.1, but also to be consistent with the objectives of economic, social, and employment benefits. So we have all the three dimensions of sustainability already. Know that this is the underlying overall objective of the common fisheries policy. And then there is another issue already also included in the regulation of 2013, is that that fisheries, sustainable fisheries, know that they should also contribute to the food supplies, the sustainable food system. And this is another big topic named and identified with the Green Deal. That we need to find a new way and to have a sustainable food supply and food systems, and fisheries, sustainable fisheries is one element of this whole system, right? Regarding the management, just to mention a precautionary approach to fisheries management and also ecosystem-based approach. So meaning that it must be a coherent, all embracing, let's say, approach to allow sound fishing populations, and to eliminate, let's say, overfishing in the EU waters. Don't be afraid what I'm going to show you now, but I think it's important to have a look at a close look at more objectives and more detailed objectives, because it's not only about the ecological transition, but also, as we are panel with the network on also human rights, and people are crucial, and fishers and fishermen and fisherwomen are crucial for this economic sector, no, and also for the future, for the generational, let's say, renewal of this fishing sector. What other objectives we can find? First, to eliminate discards, gradually discards, bycatch of the fishing activities, fundamental for, let's say, the sustainable future of the fishing population. In point C, again, the socio-economic dimension of sustainability. What the European Union wants is to have a sustainable fisheries, also in economic terms, that it's economically viable. So it's not to, let's say, to eliminate the fisheries sector, but to transform it even to more sustainable economic sector. It should be competitive, of course. Then management to adjust the fishing capacity of the fleets to, again, one step or one measure in 2013 and still valid for today, to eliminate or to reduce or to guarantee, let's say, to guarantee not to have overfishing in the fishing the fishing population. When we talk about human rights, now we also have to talk about labor rights. Another objective of the common fisheries policy is to have sound fish populations, but it must be economically viable, and also to contribute and guarantee a fair standard of living of the fishermen, of the people, no, of the working in the fisheries sector. An international dimension. The fisheries value chain is highly international. What the projects and objectives of the European Union is one thing, but the whole fisheries sector and also the sustainable use and the preservation of fishing populations has an international dimension. And it has already 10 years ago been recognized that there must be a level playing field of fisheries and agriculture projects marketed in the Union. So to contribute also internationally, one role of the European Union to have a sustainable fisheries also in other countries, in other regions of the world. To have the interest of consumers and producers alike to be taken into consideration, and then you can see in 2013 already it was very clear that the common fisheries policy is not detached from other policies such as environmental legislation. They are there are different policy fields, they have a different legal instruments, let's say, or legal basis, but there is a direct connection. And what we can see today even more pronounced, no, with, let's say, this green dimension and the blue dimension of this economic sector. Just to remember what Gabriela just mentioned before. So this was 2013, the Green Deal communication of 2019. And I think it's we have to remember that it's the Green Deal initiative or strategy is actually a new growth strategy. It's a roadmap, or we can understand it, or the European Union or the European Commission understands it as a roadmap to transform the economy as a whole towards a more sustainable economy model, from the production, transport, packaging, consumption, housing, etc. Together with this, a new growth strategy to more sustainable economy, very important is this objective, the overall objective, to be the first climate neutral continent in 2050. And of course, to contribute to a prosperous society. And what is fundamental for the fisheries sector are mainly the two bullet points, the last bullet points on this slide. No, the objective to achieve a resource-efficient economy. Fishing vessels, of course, because of their activity, they contribute also, of course, to the greenhouse gas emissions. This is one of the big challenges of the ecological transition. And on the one hand side, right, so that to make fishing vessels greener, and on the other hand, how the use of the fishing resources, no, to protect, conserve, and enhance the natural capital. And in the fishing context, let's say, to make even more the use of sustainable of fishery populations even more sustainable. So affecting the whole economy, also the blue economy, and of course directly having impacts on the fishing sectors. Gabriela mentioned the EU biodiversity strategy for 2030, which is one of the strategies or initiatives or result, let's say, of this Green Deal. And has this biodiversity strategy has a direct impact on fishing activities and the fishery policies, right? In short, or summarizing, to restore actually land, but also marine habitats, and to ensure a more sustainable use. The idea is to give back nature more than we actually use, or that is more extracted, to have a more balanced relationship, let's say, with nature. And in the following year, in 2024, there will be a stock taking of the European Commission, European Union, what we have, what kind of initiatives and legal acts actually we have implemented. Time frame is 2030, so a middle term strategy. When it comes to the major challenges, not only for the sea, but also there are changes how we use land and sea. Overexploitation, we know this in the fisheries policy or fisheries sectors very well, unfortunately, even though the European Union in the last 15 years has changed radically its management. Climate change, pollution, and exotic species that invade land and sea. The idea is actually to have a balance between our diversity and the ecosystems, also the marine biodiversity and ecosystem, and economic activities. The EU biodiversity strategy within the context of the Green Deal is not to prohibit economic activities, but to change how we use the natural resources. When it comes to the seas and oceans and the biodiversity strategy, very clear proposals to step up the efforts to have more marine protected areas. 30% more marine protected areas within the EU. as you can see, a lot of a huge increase. We would have to do the member states would have to do a lot of efforts, and 30% of these 10% of these 30% strictly protected marine areas. So no intervention allowed at all, not for tourism, not for fishing, not for any other, let's say, blue economic activity. Another proposal of the EU biodiversity strategy for the sea is to reduce and finally to eliminate all bycatches, and specifically of endangered species. Then this is a typical fishing terminology, that the fishing mortality is reduced or just below the maximum sustainable yield levels to guarantee a sound fishing population. And the maritime spatial planning, a huge effort of all member states, and and also coordinated by the European Union, how we use the maritime spaces by the different blue economic sectors, and that the fishing activities, they must be included in this distribution, let's say, of the maritime spaces. And then in 2021, so chronologically, we approach to what we have today was this communication. What Gabriele also said perfectly well, this shift of this blue growth idea to a sustainable blue economy in total. It doesn't mean that the sustainability was not, let's say, included in the blue growth strategy, but a clear shift, more focus actually on sustainability. Directly related also to the Green Deal, and saying that the blue economy is crucial for achieving the goals of the Green Deal. And this includes fisheries, be it biodiversity, protection of the ecosystem, sustainable use of natural resources, climate neutrality. As I mentioned before, the fishing vessels, they use fossil fuels still today. This is a challenge for the future. And what we can also see when we look at the blue economy, the sustainable blue economy, what the European Commission does is it divides the blue economy into sectors, in two categories of sector. And the fisheries is the marine living resources is one of the established sectors. Not of the new sectors, but one of the established sectors. And you can imagine, in a lot of other states too, fishing activities are an old traditional, let's say, economic sector. Just to give you an idea, I skipped this, established sectors. Gabriela mentioned it before on the slide, of the importance for the fishing sector, for the importance of employment of people who work actually in this sector. And here you can see this is from the source is from the Blue Economy report, Sustainable Blue Economy report of the European Commission of 2023. And as you can see on the right hand side, the persons employed, 550,000 persons employed in three, let's say, subsectors. It's primary production, fishermen and women, let's say, then the processing, the transformation into fisheries products, and then the distribution. So what we can see here is more than 500,000 people employed in these three sectors, as you can see. So an important economy sector. And then 2023, and I think it's important to show you, or to discuss probably also afterwards, the challenges for the fisheries sector. On February 2023, the Commission presented a package, what is called a package of measures. And it published 4 documents, 2 communications, 3 communications and 1 report. And the whole package was aimed to, or all these publications, they had the objective, let's say, to improve the sustainability and the resilience of the EU's fisheries and aquaculture sector. And I'm going to just make some very short comments on the first one, which is the communication on the energy transition and an action plan to protect and restore marine ecosystems, because they are directly related to the blue economy, sustainability, sustainable blue economy, and to the Green Deal. So for as a result of the last, let's say, 4 or 5 years of new approaches of this green and ecological transition. The idea of mainly of the two first documents is to promote the use of cleaner energy sources, also the fisheries sector and agriculture sector, to limit the dependence on fossil fuels for these activities, and to reduce the sector's impact on marine ecosystems in general. So what does this mean? When we look at the energy transition of the EU fisheries and aquaculture sector, is that both sectors, and the fisheries and aquaculture, they must, let's say, contribute to this overall objective to be climate neutral by 2050. A vision is to increase the energy efficiency of both sectors, and mainly, as I said, the fishing vessels. Now, when we look in practical terms, first to lower the fuel use, to make them more efficient, and to shift from fossil fuels to renewable and low carbon energy sources. This is the main idea, no, or the main perspective. So where should we go actually, so that this blue economy sector can contribute to the Green Deal? Challenges, barriers identified by the European Commission are some of mainly the main challenges technological. There are, of course, electrical boats available, no? But the fishing vessels, they have very specific characteristics, and it's not so easy to change, let's say, their engines just from fossil fuel to batteries. And also the knowledge, there is a lot of theoretical, let's say, knowledge, but it must be transferred better to actually the sector. Then the knowledge and competence is also regarding for the fishermen, no, how to deal with the fishing vessel that, for example, that they uses hydrogen, or the batteries. No, they also need to be trained to these new uses, and of course investment. This is going to be let's say very cost intensive, this shift to renew vessels or to renovate them, refurbish them. So the energy efficiency topic, one of these elements. And the second one is the action plan to protect and restore marine ecosystem. And there are mainly 4 points. First, to improve gear selectivity, to reduce and eliminate bycatches, so that fishermen, they only, let's say, really fish what they actually want, and they have a quota for it. The second point, to reduce the impact of fishing on the seabed, and there the European Commission focused very much on mainly the bottom trawlers, and to reduce their impact, and specifically that they are prohibited in sensitive areas. A gradual transition, yes, they say it's of course we cannot prohibit it just from today to tomorrow. And again, also to the knowledge. I think the research, innovation, and knowledge is like a transversal, horizontal issues, not only for the fisheries sector, but also that must be strengthened. So having said this, the challenges, according to my point of view, and probably we can discuss it later, the decarbonization, this is going to be, is already, and is going to be in the near future a huge challenge. No, fishing vessels, how do we change the fishing vessels? Probably for artisanal coastal fisheries, it's less challenge technologically, than for high distant water fleet, that they are 3 months away. How do you for the engines, what do you actually, let's say, do with these fishing vessels? The decarbonization, access to fisheries resources. Now there's a huge debate between the sustainable use, yes, versus exclusive protection, to step up marine protected areas, but also to restrict the use in these marine protected areas. Huge worries of the sector itself. Then the generational renewal, as we are talking also about human rights and labor rights, the generational renewal will be, or is already, a challenge, and will be even more in the future. That how do we assure, guarantee that young people, they still want to do fishing, labor conditions, living conditions on the boats, etc. And then the level playing field. Now the European Union and its idea of the Green Deal and the sustainable blue economy is one. Its approach, but we also have to take into consideration the internationalized value chain. And then the opportunities, there are a lot of opportunities, of course. The sustainably fished fisheries products can contribute to healthy consumption and to healthy animal proteins, sustainably fished, with highlighting the sustainability, of course, and also for job creation is already important for regarding employment, but even more also for in the future. So thank you very much. I'm sorry I talked more than I wanted. And I'm happy for a debate afterwards and listen also to your points of view. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Anina. Yes, 5 minutes more, so please, Laura, respect the time, not more than 20 minutes, please, in order to have time to answer to the questions. We have received one background in the chat, and I think all of us will have the opportunity to talk on this. Laura, I give you the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you seeing my screen? Okay. I want to start by thanking Gabriela and the Global Network of Human Rights and Environment to invite me to participate in this roundtable. I am going to talk about the impact of tourism industry in the European Union blue economy in this context of the challenges that are raised by the need to ecological and digital transition. So let's start with some figures. Right before the pandemic of COVID-19, in 2019, Europe was the top destination for international travelers, and the 51.7% of the tourist accommodation establishment was located in, and is in fact located in, coastal areas, and is also the main tourist activity that is carried out in Europe. If we follow the figures of overnight stays, that 30% are in beach resorts. The 70%, the other 70% will be split in other different kind of destinations. So it is coastal and maritime tourism concentrates a lot of the tourist activity. And although the pandemic, it's true, put a total brake on the steady growth of tourism since 2009, the reality is that the number of tourists is recovering to pre-pandemic levels, and the only changes that are being pointed out is that there are certain indicators showing that tourists are spending less money and less time to adapt to the new situation caused by inflation and economic crisis post after the pandemic. But in any case, the sector is recovering. and is recovering faster than it was previewed. To take a closer look to most figures, in the these two graphics are from the European Union Blue Economy Report of 2023, and we can see the percentage of the employment that the tourism sector means in each member state, different member states, and also the value added by member state of the tourism sector in the blue economy. So together with fisheries, tourism is one of the established sectors of the blue economy and is one of the main economic sectors of this blue economy. However, tourism is a very fickle sector, is very sensitive to crisis, and so that makes the blue economy also very sensitive and vulnerable to crisis, as we've seen in with the crisis provoked by the COVID pandemic. So, taking all this background into account, I will address my presentation to three main ideas. First, I will try to explain or make some reference to what is coastal and maritime tourism, what are we referring to, then how coastal and maritime tourism impacts on the sustainability of the European Union's blue economy, and then I will end by referring to some challenges of ecological and digital transition for the European Union coastal and maritime tourism. So, what is coastal and maritime tourism? Well, the annual reports on European Union blue economy, we have, Anina and I have referred to the 23rd one, but there has been published an annual report since 2018. So every report distinguishes between coastal and maritime tourism. Coastal tourism, it is considered an established sector of the European Union blue economy. And this established sector refers to, I quote what is in the screen, those leisure activities related to the beach, the coast, and the proximity to the sea. For example, activities that are linked to the coastal area, but that can take place on land, like sunbathing, walking near the sea, visiting places of cultural interest, of course, sleeping by the sea, eating by the sea, but also activities that can take place at sea, but that are closely related to the coast, like bathing on the beach, take a boat trip along the coast. On the contrary, or on the other hand, maritime tourism is considered to be a growing sector of the European Union blue economy, especially in the first report. Nowadays is treated together with coastal tourism. But in any case, it refers to activities that take place exclusively at the sea, such as water sports, scuba diving, or cruises, and also to those coastal activities that are really strictly related to these sea activities, such as construction of marinas, moorings, ports, appropriate services that these sea activities would need. So we can see that coastal and maritime tourism refers to activities that sometimes is difficult to clearly differentiate. So at the end, it's better to refer to them all together in this long paragraph that coastal and maritime tourism. Maritime tourism was one of the areas identified by the European Union as a priority in its strategy for blue growth. And it refers specifically to the aim of the European Union, to the purpose of the European Union to foster the increase of cruise tourism in the European Union, which might surprise, because it is also considered to be a kind of tourism that is not very sustainable for its impact in the environment. However, this purpose has allowed to increase enormously the numbers of the European Union cruise industry, and also to make Europe the first builder of ships for cruise purposes in the world. Oh, sorry. So, how coastal and maritime tourism impacts the sustainability of the European Union blue economy? As I have already mentioned, the importance of tourism for the blue economy means that this blue economy is very sensitive to crisis situations. Tourism is a sector that suffers from crisis, and this affects the blue economy as a whole, and it makes it weak in this respect. However, tourism is also a sector of rapid growth and recovery when circumstances change. And this is what we are living after the crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic. In any case, tourism makes or is important for the sustainability of the European Union blue economy because it makes it more volatile. Besides, tourism is an economic activity that has a strong impact in the environment. And there is a contradictory relationship at this point, because on the one hand, tourism requires and benefits from a well-preserved environment, but tourism activity requires infrastructures that have a strong impact in the environment. We are talking about roads to get to the destination, airports, flights with all the problem of the carbon footprint of airplanes. We are also talking about railway networks, buildings of hotels, resorts, apartments. So tourism faces particular sustainability challenges that affect the European Union blue economy as a whole. A specific challenge of the tourism sector is the high seasonal nature of this activity. This makes it especially unsustainable because it subdues the environment. It affects the quality of jobs also, of the work that is developed in the tourism sector, because it's difficult to attract talent to jobs that suffer from this seasonality situation. Also, seasonality poses great stress for destinations. Roads that are used in certain periods much more than another, 2, 3, 4 times more. Problems with waste collection services, access to water, access to other services, healthcare, etc. The tourist sector is also a sector that has been generally criticized by not so beneficial working conditions. And so there is also a great concern for social rights in this sector, and there is a purpose to improve the quality of jobs, to attract more qualified personnel, So it's also a problem that it's specifically faced in this sector. A positive aspect of the tourist sector in the European Union blue economy is that it's mainly composed by medium and small and medium enterprises. And that means that it is an economic sector that is very well linked, very well rooted in the territory. And this is beneficial from the sustainability. This might be beneficial from a sustainable point of view. So, what are the challenges of the ecological and digital transition for the European Union coastal and maritime tourism? Well, the first challenge, and as it has been already mentioned by Gabriela, is that both transitions are conceived together. They are both sides of the same coin. And this is a challenge because it is necessary to undertake both transformations at the same time. And this has to be done in the context of continuous growing from the European Union perspective. What the European Union proposes is to grow in a different way, but it is to change how tourism is organized and undertook, but not really to stop tourism or to diminish tourism. There are some authors that have reserves to the possibility of achieving this goal. Anyway, undertaking an ecological and digital transition at the same time poses specific challenges because tourism affects many different sectors of activity. And ecological and digital transition calls for very different transformation in each one of them. Let's think, for example, in the transport sector, that is completely different to the building sector, or to the hospitality sector, or to leisure activities. Even within one of these sectors, let's think of transport. It's completely different if we are talking about roads or air transportation or sea transportation. So for every sector, there will be specific challenges and the changes that are being undertaken will have different consequences. Besides, as I have already said, most of the industries in this sector are small and medium enterprises. And this makes it also more difficult for them sometimes to establish this transition, to think what are the possibilities, to plan their transitions, to achieve new purposes to this regard. Because of this specific situation, and also because of its high economical value and because of the impact of COVID-19 in the tourist sector, tourism has been the first industrial sector elected by the European Union to define a transition pathway for tourism to promote this ecological and digital transition. This initiative, this tourism pathway, responds to the industrial strategy defined by the European Commission in 2020. And it is an initiative that aims to identify the set of policy areas and measures that are needed for this double transition in the tourism sector. It is not a document that sets the official position of the European Commission on the subject, but it contains, it has been developed and it intends to be implemented through a procedure of called co-creation that involves public and private stakeholders in the tourism sector in Europe. The Pathway for Tourism report was finally published in 2022, and it shows that the task to do is enormous in terms of the number of measures that have to be taken, and the complexity and the diversity of the aspects that need to be addressed. So the European Union will have to act through very different titles of competences. And there I will fast, because of the time, I will try to go fast. There is a specific competence title on tourism that has been introduced in the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union. But if you read this article, you will see that the competences of the European Union on tourism are just to support and to promote and to, in a certain way, coordinate the action of the member states. It is not a shared competences as in other areas, of the European Union competences. And although the European Parliament called in 2021 for a modification of the treaty to this regard and to make tourism a shared competence for the European Union, but this has not is not on the table at the moment. In any way, this competence of support and promote the action of member states is the basis, is a very clear basis for this, the transition pathway for tourism. And I have to say that since its adoption in 2022, the European Commission has published 3 calls, the last on March 23, to show that, to let different stakeholders, private or public stakeholders, to commit themselves into targets to achieve this ecological and digital transition. So they have to choose between different topics, which one they want to apply in the in their internal organization, how are they going to do so, and when are they intend to when do they intend, sorry, to achieve this target. No, this is going. But there are also other competences that the European Union can use in order to promote this ecological and digital transition on tourism. And these other competences are very evident when we read the transition pathway for tourism and the proposals, the different subjects where this document proposed the European Union to act, and also so they ask for regulation in short-term rentals. There is already a proposal to this regard. They ask the European Union to promote multimodal travel, because if you try to travel through the European Union, you will find that there is quite difficult to organize a trip that combines air transportation with train transportation, for example. So this has to be improved. Also, the link between different train networks all through the European Union, etc. So if you go through this list, you will see that it affects to different subjects, different policies in the competence of the European Union. That means that in some of them, the European Union will be able to harmonize member states' internal law. In some others, the European Union will only be able to promote, to support the actions that member states want to undertake by themselves. And in order to have at least 10 minutes for discussion, I want to just make some final considerations concerning the specific challenges for the tourism industry in this ecological and digital transition. The main challenge is it's due to the specific characteristics of this industry. The fact that it affects so many different kinds of activities with so many different characteristics for each one of them. The size and characteristics of the companies in this sector also make it very difficult, because sometimes it's difficult for them to know what changes are possible to make. What are this was already mentioned by Janina. It's also a characteristic in the fishing sector. But quite often the problem is that the private stakeholders don't even know how they can profit of these transitions opportunities. So there is a specific need of public policies and support measures to promote the changes. And because at the same time, transition is an unstoppable process. It has to be. It has already begun, and it has to be. It has to be followed. And there is a specific problem in the tourism transition that has been highlighted, and it's the need to avoid exclusion, because digital transition often excludes part of the population that it's not ready to adjust to these new digital applications, and so that have difficulty to really benefit from not only to benefit, but even to continue traveling as they used to do it. And there are also problems or risk concerning the respect of human rights, because many of these applications contain personal data, and so the right of intimacy can be also in risk for this digital transition. And thank you very much. I hope I was clear enough. I tried to go fast through the main ideas I wanted to share with you.
Thank you very much, Laura, for this presentation and all the novelties, the things new that you have mentioned. Now it is time to answer to the questions and comments we have received during this minute.